Today we are going to be talking about Disney's new film, Wish, which celebrates Disney 100 years of Disney. And more specifically, we are going to be talking about the Easter eggs that you can find within the film. But before we get started, I'll just quickly introduce myself in case you haven't seen me before. My name is Amy Astridge and this is my YouTube channel where I talk about kind of whatever interests me. It's a lot of musical theatre. I've just been to Disneyland, so there are a few Disney vlogs up here. So if that sounds like something that you would be interested in, I would absolutely love it if you would subscribe and stick around. In my opinion, Wish follows a far more traditional Disney format than a lot of the recent Disney films we've had, and actually I think a lot of that comes down to having a proper villain. Even when you think of Frozen, you had Elsa being the anti-hero throughout, and then also Hans coming in with the plot twist at the end. And with Moana, there is not really one central villain. We have Tamatoa, but he feels more comedic relief than scary in any way. But I think with Magnifico in Wish, we return to like actually scary Disney villains. He wants a lot of the same things that those traditional Disney villains want. He wants power, he wants control. However, I do personally like the fact that this film doesn't have a love interest involved, which is similar to a lot of Disney's more recent films, and to be honest, I think it's more appropriate. The characters are teenagers. That being said, I hope Disney learned to strike a balance between sometimes having the whole like love story being part of the plot and other times knowing when it's not necessary. And in this case, it doesn't feel necessary. This film is about family, it's about community. I'm a big advocate of happy endings not having to include romantic relationships. Anyway, onto the Easter eggs. The directors have confirmed that this film contains between 100 and 150 Disney Easter eggs. Obviously, it's only in the cinema right now, so it would be impossible for me to find all of those in one viewing. So I just wanted to talk you through the 25 that I either spotted myself or have since discussed with friends. And as I often do on this channel, I've ranked them. So we're going to have an easy section, a medium section and a hard section. Let me know in the comments if you spotted any of these Easter eggs, and if you spotted any extras that aren't on this list, pop them in the comments too. 3, 2, 1. First of all, let's start off with the easy tier, and I think one of the most obvious ones is the opening. We have the storybook that is really reminiscent of like Pinocchio, Sleeping Beauty, a lot of those classic traditional Disney films. Sword in the Stone is one that comes to mind for me. Another easy one, this is kind of lots combined into one topic here, but throughout the whole film there are so many hidden Mickeys. Most noticeably, I would say, in the fireworks at the end of the film, but Asher also draws one at one point, and if you look closely you will see so many of them. Another one of the more obvious Easter eggs is Asher's friends being representative of the Seven Dwarfs from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Embarrassingly, this one took me too long to figure out. So just to recap, we had Dahlia, who represents Doc, Garbo, who represents Grumpy, Hal, who represents Happy, Simon, who represents Sleepy, Safi, who represents Sneezy, Dario, who represents Dopey, and Bazima, who represents Bashful. So all of the first letters of their names correlate with the dwarf that they are representing. When in the film did you realise that? Let me know in the comments. One of the most obvious ones to me comes just after I'm a Star, when Asher is talking to two of the woodland creatures, and one of them is referred to as John and the other one is referred to as Bambi. Obviously Bambi is referencing Bambi, but also John is referencing the bear, Little John, in Robin Hood. Another one of the more obvious Easter eggs in this film is that Star looks kind of like Mickey Mouse with that heart-shaped face, but also that Star sprinkles dust to share its magic, just like Tinkerbell does in Peter Pan, albeit the powers are different. Obviously Tinkerbell's makes people fly and Star's seems a little bit more versatile. And one of the first times Star's magic is used, there was a sound effect that really reminded me of Tinkerbell, that really kind of drew that parallel. The next Easter egg is more of just a throwback really to the old school Disney villains. I loved that Magnifico has a lair, just like a lot of the villains that we love to hate. And we'll talk more about that lair later, but a lot of the traditional Disney villains have that space that is like a physical representation of them. Another one of the most obvious ones, I think, is Peter Pan. We see the civilian from Rosa's in an outfit that looks exactly like Peter Pan's traditional outfit, with the feather in his hat and all, and he's saying that he wants to learn to fly. And actually earlier in the film, when we saw this same man's wish, it showed an outline of Peter Pan as well. Another really obvious one is the reference to the magic mirror mirror in Snow White. There are a lot of Snow White references in this, presumably because it was the first Disney film. Magnifico even says the famous phrase, mirror, mirror on the wall, and obviously in the end he is trapped inside that magic mirror too, maybe implying that he becomes the magic mirror. And lastly, for the easy tier is when we hear When You Wish Upon a Star being played by Asher's grandpa, Sabino, just at the end of the film. I think it's such a lovely way to end the movie because it really feels like it ties it all up with a bow. It reminds you of how closely linked this film is with the company's history and with all of the films that we know and love and have grown up with. And let's face it, it gives you a kick in the tear ducts while you're at it. I was doing so well, so well. Actually, another one that I've just thought of that has given me goosebumps, because this is the moment in the film when I really started crying, is when Asher says to Star, "We know you too well," or something along those lines, "so I know you need to go so you can help other people," which is obviously the same as what happens in Mary Poppins, and it makes me cry then as well. Okay, let's move on to the medium difficulty tier. So these are the ones that are less like slap you in the face, but if you're watching carefully, I'm sure you will have spotted at least some of them. First up, we have the job role that Asher is applying for. She is applying to be the Sorcerer's Apprentice. Who does that remind you of? Obviously, we are talking about Mickey Mouse's famous role as the Sorcerer's Apprentice. I loved this callback. It felt so obvious and yet so clever, and it just feels really fitting to reference Mickey Mouse in this way. Next up, when Asher is looking through the wishes, she sees the wish of a woman who wants to be a dressmaker. But the dress that she sees in that wish might look quite familiar. It is Aurora's dress from Sleeping Beauty, but the reason this is in medium rather than easy is because it's the blue version of the dress that Aurora actually wears for most of the Sleeping Beauty film, rather than the pink version of the dress that we have grown to kind of imagine her in. But the only reason we actually see her more often in the pink is because Cinderella had already reserved the blue dress in the Disney Princess lineup. Speaking of Cinderella, Asher befriends some bluebirds in the forest just like Cinderella does, and just like in Sleeping Beauty, the woodland animals line up to be Asher's dance partners. During that same scene, the mushrooms, which was so cute by the way, how did they make mushrooms so cute, come to life and say the line, "We love crazy!" And again, I was like, that itches my brain, but why?
I love crazy.
And also, I think it would be remiss of me to carry on without mentioning the similarities between the talking flowers and mushrooms in Wish with Alice in Wonderland. Even the animation style of these looked quite similar to me. I said we'd come back to Magnifico's lair, and did you notice the poison apple from Snow White sitting just next to him on the table? Does that imply that Magnifico made the poison apple? But don't forget about the lair, we'll come back to it again. I loved the song Knowing What I Know Now, and about halfway through I realised that it's a callback to one of my favourite Disney songs, Trash in the Camp from Tarzan, where all of the characters sing and play whatever they can find around them, which is exactly what's happening during Wish as well. When Magnifico destroys the wishes, some of them might have sounded kind of familiar. One of them wished to find the perfect nanny, and immediately after, Magnifico said he was popping it. So close. When Asher tries to lure Magnifico away so her friends can get into his office, you might recognise the cloak that she is wearing. It is the same as the fairy godmother's cloak from Cinderella. The iconic blue hood and pink bow, and then of course Star makes her a magic wand to go along with it. And the last Easter egg in the medium tier is when Valentino says that he wants to live in a utopian community where animals can talk and wear clothes. Where's he talking about? Say it with me. Zootopia. Okay, so let's move on to the hard tier. The first one being a shot of Magnifico that might feel familiar if you are a Little Mermaid fan. The close-up of his eyes is very reminiscent of almost the same shot of Ursula during The Little Mermaid. And as I said, I've only watched it once so far, so I could be barking up the wrong tree, but I do think that watching Magnifico, I think there might be more callbacks to traditional Disney villains in his like movements and maybe even some of his lines. The next one is just a small moment that I really liked, which is that Asher makes a wish and she blows the seeds off a dandelion just like Belle does in Beauty and the Beast. It doesn't work out for her, but I thought it was a nice little reference. The I'm a Star number is absolutely packed full of references, but one of my favourites was when the three birds on the tree light up for a split second in the colours of green, pink and blue, just like Flora, Fauna and Merryweather from Sleeping Beauty. In the scene when the friends are trying to open the roof and let the wishes out, when they jump and swing from the tower, one of them mimics Tarzan's sound. And lastly, I said we'd come back to Magnifico's lair. We've talked about the apple, but if you look slightly behind the apple, you see the black flame candles from Hocus Pocus. And he had no trouble lighting them, so we know what that means. So here were a few of the Disney Easter eggs that I spotted during my first viewing of Wish. I honestly can't wait to watch it several more times so that I can pick up on even more. Let me know how many of these you saw, and let me know in the comments if you saw any that I haven't mentioned. Subscribe to my channel to see more videos from me, and like this video if you enjoyed it, because I've never done anything like this before. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope all your wishes come true.